Hello YouTube! Kyle Sinclair here. With any luck, this video will help you, the as-yet non-pianist, learn to sit down in front of the ivories and tickle out some tunes with confidence. I'm going to try to avoid any boring theory and just give you the essentials, so as long as you know what rhythm is and how to utilize it, we should be okay. At first glance, I can imagine that the 88 keys on a keyboard look pretty daunting and random. However, if you study it for a moment, you'll see that there is a very specific pattern it follows, and the black keys help serve as road signs. The black keys always alternate between sets of 2 and sets of 3. The note under each one is always the same pitch. For example, in the middle of the sets of 2, the white key is always D. So although it's an octave up, it's still the same pitch. See? It's still a D. Now, I know I just tossed out a few fancy terms here, so before we move any further, it would be pertinent to learn the names of the notes, because this will make them much easier to identify. And I can't think of where better to begin than in the middle, or middle C, that is. That's this note right here. This is essentially the center of the entire piano, and is a staple in simple beginnings. So, that is middle C. Alphabetically speaking, each note is assigned a letter A through G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The middle C will always be C. Fortunately for you, it's lined up in order, so move left, or down the scale, to find B and A. Conversely, move right, or up the scale, for D, E, F, and G. So, once again, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Once you get to G, the next note is always A, and the scale repeats. So make a note that A is always the second white key within the set of 3 black keys, and C is the white note preceding the 2 black keys. Now, what are the black keys for, you may be asking? That's a great question. The black keys are the note in between the 2 white notes. So if we have C and D, those represent 2 very specific notes. This black key here is either C sharp or D flat, and I'll get to those in another lesson. But that is the note between C and D. Now, the distance from one note to its corresponding equal is called an octave. Note the root oct because there are 8 notes in the scale. So when you play middle C, for example, with another C, either above or below it, you're playing an octave. The same holds true for every note. Can you hear how it's the same note? Each note has several versions of a progression from 1 to an octave up. I'm sure you've all heard of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do before. Well, that's what this is. What I'm going to teach you are the major and minor scales. Think of it this way. Major is positive and triumphant, while minor is more negative and foreboding. I'm going to play C major and C minor. Listen for the differences. Just one note change changed the entire sound of the chord. Now, this next one will either be F major or F minor. Can you tell which it is? If you guessed minor, you're right. Alright, so now we'll go over the easiest scale on the piano. When you know the C scale, you can play a version of almost anything. It's played entirely on white keys, C to C. So, to begin, place your right thumb on middle C, and then rest your other fingers on the notes next to it. See? 5 fingers, 5 keys. So, play those 5 notes now. This is a great lesson in dexterity. That means being able to move your fingers independently. So, now, for the entire scale, you'll notice that your fingers don't quite go all the way up to C, do they? So, play 3 notes, C, D, and E, then cross your thumb underneath to hit F. Now you'll notice the rest of your fingers fit quite nicely all the way up to C. And then back down, F, cross your middle finger over to E, and C. So practice that. Now let's try the same thing with the left hand. It's the same pattern but reversed. So starting with your left pinky on lower C, play all the way up to G, then cross your middle finger over to A, complete the chord, and back down, cross under, so you see how it's the same? Both hands are doing exactly the same thing, but reversed. And that coordination will take a lot of practice, so play each hand individually until it's about muscle memory. Just go over and over the scale until it's innate. Then, if you're up for it, slowly try putting the hands together. The last thing I'm going to teach you here is the C major chord. The major chord of any note is always the first, third, and fifth note in the scale. In the case of C, you're playing C, E, and G. So, to recap, the notes are named A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and we build around middle C. The distance between 2 corresponding notes is called an octave. The black keys are organized with sets of 2 and sets of 3. And each note has a triumphant major scale and a darker minor scale. Plus, we even learned the C scale. With the C major chord as a solid foundation. So we're off to an amazing start. Remember to keep practicing and stay tuned for more lessons.